Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 3rd of August 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says abuse of children can be spotted in eyes. So what exactly are we looking into? We will be focusing on two important parameters. One is the child abuse, the other one is with respect to the shaken baby syndrome. So first thing that we need to understand is what exactly is the child abuse. So child abuse basically constitutes the maltreatment of a particular child. It can have multi dimensions. One can be physical, where hitting that particular child, so there is physical abuse that is happening to that particular child, and there can also be emotional or ill treatment which can have a psychological impact on the child. There can be sexual abuse, or there can be complete neglect. So I'm not giving due concern to that particular child, so there has to be some emotional support that has to be provided to the child, but here again I'm neglecting. So because of all these types of physical, emotional neglect as well as sexual abuse, what will happen to that particular child is there can be harm to a particular child's health, or for that matter the survival or the development quotient of this particular child. And then what will happen is the overall development of the child is in jeopardy. So what we need to understand is this whole concept of child abuse has multi dimensions, and these dimensions involve the physical, the emotional, the neglect as well as the sexual abuse. So let's try and understand what exactly the statistics say with respect to the child abuse. So when we look into the statistics, according to study on the child abuse India 2007 brought out by the Union Ministry for Women and Child Development, 2 out of every 3 children suffer from physical abuse, and more than 80% of the abuse is by their parents. At the same time, the study found that 69% of the children reported to have been physically abused. Out of them, 54.68% were boys. So it is not only the girls who are actually going through this problem. Even boys have sexual abuses, even they have physical abuses, they have emotional abuses. All types of abuses are also seen with respect to boys as well. So 53% of the children surveyed said they have been subjected to some form of sexual abuse. So those children between the ages of the 15 and 12 are at the highest risk of abuse and exploitation. So kindly remember these facts. This can act as a fodder for your mains examination when you're actually substantiating your answer. So what we will have to understand in this particular case is what exactly is the issue area. So what exactly the prime focus in this particular article is, we have number of laws when it comes to the external domainal examples. Say for example, when we have a general focus of abuse, it is usually something with respect to the child labor, or with respect to the prostitution, or with respect to the marriage. So for all these domains of child labor, the prostitution, the marriage, the constitution as well as there are other supportive laws which are actually taking care of it. So the domain basically remains in terms of the public focus. But what exactly is happening is, we are not focusing on what happens within the family limit, what exactly happens within the boundaries of the four wall, what exactly happens in the schools or in the government homes. This is what the attention is required. So we have already number of laws that have been established with respect to the public domain, but there are no laws that is there with respect to the private domain, and the number of incidences that are being reported in the private domain go unnoticed, or they are underreported. So all these things needs to be focused is what this article speaks about. So what exactly can be the measures that needs to be taken care, apart from the governmental measures or the laws that needs to be surfacing with respect to the private domains? What also needs to be done is, there has to be that approach that we need to take care. What exactly is this approach that we are speaking about? We need to start speaking to that particular child. We need to ask the child what exactly that the child is facing, any problems, is there any problems that it is facing at the school, or is it facing anywhere else. And majority of the sexual abuses that happens, right, all these sexual abuses happens by the close neighbors, or in fact the family members themselves. So what the parents themselves have to do is, they'll have to teach the kids what exactly is the genuine touch, what exactly is the sexual touch. So in case there is a sexual touch that happens from any of the other people, then the child has to immediately report it to the parents. So what needs to be done is, there are certain things that needs to be worked upon, and that is the primary initiative has to be taken by the parents, so that in case there is any sexual abuse that happens, the child would be able to tell the parent. And also what needs to be done is, currently what exactly happens is, the legal procedure is sometimes takes a lot of time, right? Let's say for example, even in the public domain there are certain cases that actually come up. So what exactly happens in case I'll have to put this particular person behind bars? The legal procedure that is currently taking is a long duration process. So in this particular process, what will happen is there are two parties that are involved. They may enter into a negotiation bid. So what needs to be understood is any person who has committed a crime has to face the consequences. But in case the longest duration of the law process takes place, then what would happen is there will be certain external pressures that can act, and when there is external pressures that can act, what would happen is it will result into negotiations, and when there is negotiations, what would happen is the person who has to be served behind bars will not be given that particular judgment. So there needs to be a procedural change with respect to legal process. And what needs to be also understood is majority of the people who are actually going through this particular law process are also people from the economically weaker strata of the society. Because these people are actually from the weaker strata, these people will not be able to take care of the particular judicial proceedings, because the judicial proceedings is a very costly affair. So in order to make sure that these people are able to go through the judicial mechanism, there needs to be provided the legal assistance, because majority of the people are from economic strata. They'll not be able to stand by the amount of cost that an advocate takes. So because they'll have to make sure that there is justice served, what needs to be provided is government needs to provide them the legal assistance. At the same time, what also needs to be understood is it's the majority of the people, because the parents are actually working, both the parents are actually working, these people are actually allowing the kids to be taken care by a guardian or a caregiver who is somewhat another person. So what needs to be also understood is these parents who are giving their kids under the custody of the caregivers, are they taking care of the baby in the right way also needs to be taken into picture. Because number of things that has happened of late is it is the caregivers who are also physically abusing, sometimes they are sexually abusing. So what the parents should also focus is whether the kids who are actually under the control of the caregivers, are they giving the due consideration, due love, due care. In case there is any abuse, then the abuse has to be reported by the child, or in fact the parents have to take care of all this, is what this article basically speaking about. Another important point that we will also have to understand is with respect to the shaken baby syndrome. So what exactly is the shaken baby syndrome? One of the things that we need to understand is baby has a very delicate and soft brains, and it has sometimes the weak neck muscles. So because it has the weak neck muscles and this is connected to the brains, in fact when you hold the baby, that is why usually people say hold it by the head. But sometimes, let's say for example, the baby is crying violently, so we will have to stop the baby from crying. So what exactly we do, we used to usually shake the baby, right? Sometimes when there is overstrain or the over force that is pushed on the child's brain, what can happen is there can be a breakage, that is there will be delicate blood vessels that they have. But when we shake the particular baby or a young child, what can happen is this can repeatedly hit inside the skull, and when we are repeatedly hitting inside the skull, this can bruise the brain, or it can cause the bleeding in the brain, or it can cause brain swelling. So what this will result is you have the behavior patterns which is actually focused on the front part of the brain, and the other part and the behind part of the brain is basically focusing on the eyes as well as the other sensory organs. What will happen is because there is this particular shaker baby syndrome, because there is rupture of neurons and the cells in the particular brain, what will be resulting is there will be behavioral changes with respect to the child. So this should also be avoided, is what this particular article goes on to say. So kindly remember both these factual data. One is with respect to the statistics, and next is with respect to what should be done at the personal level that the parents have to do in order to make sure that there is no physical abuse that the child is actually going through. So this is all we will have to know from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article is important from the prelims perspective. So what exactly is the context? It says the Defense Research Development Organization on Thursday successfully tested an interceptor missile as part of the under development of the ballistic missile interceptor, that is the Advanced Area Defense. So what exactly is this Advanced Area defense. It is an interceptor missile which is capable of destroying enemy ballistic missiles at low altitude. So one of the first point that we need to remember from the prelims perspective is about the low altitude, that is the advanced air defense system. And the next important point is it is a single stage missile which is actually powered by a solid propellant. It is this. Then again there is factual data. Kindly remember this because UPSC has been asking even the weights of certain things. So it is a 7.5 meters tall and weighs around 1.2 tons. It had a diameter of less than 0.5 meter. The state of the art interceptor missile has its own mobile launcher, secure data link for interception, independent tracking and homing capabilities and sophisticated radars. So kindly remember all these facts. This can be a potential question from your prelims perspective. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So what exactly is this article all about? So we will be discussing in detail about the Cloud Act. So the Cloud here stands for Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of the Data Act, which is one of the acts that the US government has actually released. So what exactly does this particular act speak about? So basically what this act speaks about is this will enable the US government to actually enter into a number of agreements with the like-minded states, or for example the countries which are in line with whatever the US thinks, so that there is cross-border data sharing. So what will actually happen in this particular case is currently there are certain technical companies, say for example the Facebook, the Google and all these other tech companies. So these companies will not be able to share the data with the other countries. So in order to overcome this particular issue, in order to make sure that data sharing happens at a very faster pace, what would happen is tech companies would be able to share the data directly with the foreign governments. So let's try and understand what exactly does the particular issue says. So what we are currently facing is a number of problems. So the first point that we will have to understand is with respect to the data. So what it says is that out of top 10, 8 of the top 10 most accessed websites in India are owned by US entities. So this is the first factual data that we need to remember. And the second factual data that we need to remember is, let's say for example there is a particular security threat. It can be at the sovereignty level or at the same fact at the personal level. So in case we need some investigation modules, we need certain statistics, we will need certain recommendations that the particular person has to go through. In that particular case, what we will need is the crime data. So in order to fetch the crime data, we will require the support of number of organizations, and one such support is required by Facebook. So previously in the year 2017, what exactly happened was there were certain threats to India in the terms of security threats. In that particular case, Indian security personnel did ask for data from Facebook, and the number of times that the data was actually requested was 9,853 times. So these security personnel wanted certain data of how exactly the conversation happened between two people. Was there anything that can be extracted from the conversation? So on 9,853 times they have actually asked the Facebook to provide certain conversations, but what exactly has happened is only 54% of the times was data given to the security personnel of India. So on one side we see that almost 8 of the top 10 websites that India is accessing within the boundaries of India is based in United States, and at the same time when we have asked the particular credentials or we have asked certain responses from Facebook, what Facebook has provided information is only with respect to 54%. And what this can actually do is this can be a problem to the enforcement agencies. So even if Facebook is actually providing certain data, what it will usually provide is you have the Facebook login page. When we are actually filling up the Facebook login page, we do provide certain details, right? That is, say for example the name, the date of birth, the email ID, the mobile number and so on. What Facebook is currently doing is it is only providing these data, but it is not providing the conversation. Let's say for example we have the communicator within the Facebook, that is the personal chat window, and there is conversation that happens, let's say for example between two terrorists. So what Facebook is currently doing is it is providing the initial login details, but it is not providing the conversational details. So this is also another flaw that is there. So in case India actually wants a particular conversation between two people, then Facebook is not currently providing these details to the Indian security personnel. And even if in case, let's say for example India wants a particular access to more information of the content, or for example the online conversation, this again is not being provided for the investigation investigation purposes, and even if it is provided, what it is also taking is, it is taking a lot of time. Let's say for example a particular crime is committed today, it will almost take a lot of time, let's say for example 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. So there is a lot of delay in the particular process. So as a result, this can be a problem to the investigation agencies. So what India is actually planning or should be doing is, it should be entering the Cloud Act is what this whole concept is. So what exactly is the problem area? One of the problem areas that we are accessing is, we are not getting the complete details. So the details that is provided by the Facebook or for example the Google or any of these tech companies are not completely in detail. Another problem is, it is taking a long duration. This is scuffling the entire process, and what exactly is happening is, there is a lot of delay with respect to the execution of this particular process. So what exactly is the current procedure? So when you look into the current procedure, right, what exactly happens is, there is particular program or a particular agreement called as the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. So let's say for example there is an officer or there is a particular organization, let's say CBI for that matter, wants to access a particular data. So what it has to do is, it has to request the data from the mutual legal assistance, where only after due consent is given by the US government, then there will be certain content that will be released by the US company. Until and unless the US executive agency does not approve this, then no data will be provided by the tech companies. So there is undue disadvantage, right? That will take a lot of time, as we have already discussed. This can become a very time consuming and even take sometimes as long as 3 years. So in order to overcome all these issues, that is why we need to enter the Cloud Act is what this particular article says. So what this article says is, currently what, in case we will have to get the information, what we will have to enter is a mutual legal assistance treaty. And because we will have to enter into a mutual legal assistance treaty, which will be, I mean, any tech companies will have to provide the data only after the US executive agency gives permission. And because it takes a lot of time, that is why we need to enter the Cloud Act is what this particular act is goes on to say. And what it currently goes on to say is that it speaks about the Sri Krishna committee report. So Sri Krishna committee recommendation has clearly said that there needs to be data localization. Also RBI in the number of attempts in the previous time has again said that there needs to be data localization. So all the data that Indian users are using, that is, say for example you, me, all of us have certain data that is being given to the processing authority. So all this data that is being processed within India, and if the users are based in India, such data should be there in India is what the Sri Krishna committee has said, and also the RBI has currently said in number of things. But let's say for example there is a particular crime that is committed. So currently whatever the data is there, the data is not actually restricted only to India, right? Let's say for example there is a cyber warfare, or let's say for example there is transnational terrorism, or for example money laundering. It need not be there that all these provisions or all these attacks that are happening within the domains of cyber security happens only from India. Okay, we have data localization. So data localization issues, in case there is something that is happening, all the data that is there is only with respect to the persons who are located in India. It will be majority of the times the citizens, and if we have these information with respect to these people, it is fair and fine. But what if it is generated from some other region or some other country? In this particular case, the data localization will not serve any purpose. So because the data localization does not serve any purpose, because the perpetrator of this crime, the perpetrator of cyber terrorism, the perpetrator of money laundering is not located in India. In case he is located in India, then all the data localization will help. But if he is from some other country, again data localization is not going to serve the purpose. So in order to overcome all these issues, that is in terms of the details of the conversation, in terms of the long duration, in terms of the inter-country terrorism or money laundering and other issues, what this particular article says is, there are all these issues that are currently taking place, and because all these issues have to be addressed, and that is why we will have to enter the Cloud Act is what this particular article goes on to say. So what are the advantages? Okay, now that if in case we do decide that we will be stepping into an agreement with Cloud Act, what exactly would be the advantages? So one of the advantages would be the long duration that it is currently taking place will be actually reduced. So there will be less number of time, so the investigation will happen at a much faster rate, and at the same time we would be able to combat the crime. So in case there is particular conversation that happens, let's say between two terrorists. In case we get to know in advance what exactly the whole plot is about, we would be also able to control the crime, and at the same time there would be certain transnational crimes that are taking place. So in this particular case, the data localization that is currently employed will not serve the purpose, because the perpetrators are not Indians, and because the perpetrators are not Indians and it is taken a transnational approach, what this will also help is it will also be helping in resolving certain crimes which has the transnational approach. So these are the advantages of the Cloud Act. So in order to make sure all these things are addressed, in order to know that all these advantages can be taken up, what we need to do is we need to take up this particular Cloud Act. And Cloud Act is basically nothing but sharing of data information between an US and another country, that is like-minded country, who are actually giving consent to all the laws of the US, that they are actually saying that we are ready to accept your robust privacy protections, and we are ready to accept by the due process, and we are ready to stick by the rule of law in case all these laws are actually firm and fine. And if I am ready to consent with all the agreements with respect to the US, then the US will be acknowledging this fact and they will be sharing the information. So India should be acknowledging this Cloud Act is what this article all about. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article speaks about the e-commerce policy draft. So what exactly is the context here? So one of the task force of the Union Commerce Ministry has actually submitted the national policy on the electronic governance. So the first point that we need to understand with respect to this e-commerce policy draft is with respect to the statistics. So what exactly does the statistics say? According to one of the estimates of the finance ministry, the size of the digital economy in India will be almost of up to 1 trillion by 2022, and it will be accounting to almost 50% of the entire economy by 2030. And what we also need to understand is that there are certain important points. So what exactly are the important points with respect to the statistical data? That is, India's e-tail business is estimated to be worth around 25 billion currently, and over a decade the e-commerce is expected to swell around 200 billion. So because it is carrying a huge economical value, what we need is one of the policies, and in order to make sure that there is a policy for the e-commerce sector, that is why this particular e-commerce policy draft has been released by the task force that has been appointed by the Union Commerce Ministry. Some of the first what we need to understand is what exactly are the features. One of the first point that we need to understand is there will be a single national regulator. So currently the e-commerce ministry does not have any of these particular regulators. So you have the number of e-commerce websites, you have the number of ways that the e-commerce runs, but there is no single provision or a regulator as to how this e-commerce as a whole functions. In order to make sure that this problem is addressed, the first thing that we have in this particular e-commerce draft is that there will be a single national regulator, which will be the eyes and the ears, which will be keep watching concurrently as to how exactly is this e-commerce ministry or the e-commerce programs are functioning. So we will have the single national regulator for the e-commerce. And the next point that it goes on to speak about is with respect to the discounts. So currently what exactly happens is there is a large scale discounts that have been provided by the large scale, that is e-commerce firms. And what this particular draft bill says is that you are providing all these discounts, but these discounts have to be phased out within 2 years. So all the discounts that you are currently providing to the customers in the Flipkart or in the form of Amazon or any other e-commerce websites, all these websites that are providing the discounts, you will have to phase out this within 2 years. Why? Because it is making sure that there is fair competition also with the retailers in the market. So because in order to make sure that there is fair competition, in order to make sure that other people actually don't suffer, that is why the discounts that you are providing currently should be phased out within 2 years is the next point. And third thing that it says is that all the e-commerce data, let's say for example Amazon is a US company and you have number of other companies as well. So what it is currently saying is that e-commerce firms to have storage, that is the localization of the data, that is consumer data that is there within India, has to be stored within India. And for the same, what it also says is that in case you are actually making sure that there is data localization within India, we would be providing you tax incentives. So tax incentives will be provided to you in case there is data localization. This is the third feature that it goes on to say. And the fourth important point that it goes on to say is with respect to the FDI. So what exactly happened was, there were two things that we will have to consider in FDI. One is there is something called as the market model, the other one is called as the inventory model. You have Amazon here, so and then Amazon here actually has the customer here, and then you have the retailer here. What exactly happened in the FDI is, we were giving 100% FDI with respect to the automatic route under the market model. So what exactly market model does is, let's say this is Amazon. So what exactly it does is, there is a retailer who actually says there is a particular product and he showcases the same on the Amazon website. So whatever product that is there with respect to the retailer, he is directly sending it to the customer. That is, Amazon is acting as the bridge here. So what exactly happens in inventory model is that, let's say for example there is Flipkart. So Flipkart already has a manufacturing process and also has a go down of its own. So here what exactly is happening in this particular process is, Flipkart is directly sending its goods or whatever it has actually manufactured within its particular go down to the customer, and that becomes the inventory model. So what exactly is a market model? A market model is that which actually involves just acting as a bridge. So there are retailers who are selling it and there are customers who are actually getting that particular product, but Amazon here just acts like a bridge. So there was 100% FDI in the market model. But what exactly happens in the inventory model? I have my own go down, I have my own manufacturing. What exactly I do here is, I'm selling it directly to the customer, and that is the inventory model. So what this particular force or this particular e-commerce policy actually says is that the government currently does not actually let the foreign direct investment e-commerce committee, that is which has the own inventories, but currently there would be a certain changes. So what exactly is the change? So there would be a 49% inventory in terms of the FDI. So currently what we have is a 0%, but this will be raised up to 49%, that is the FDI up to 49%, so they can have their own inventory and own go down, and they'll be able to sell it directly to a particular customer. But there is a small problem. So this is only with respect to 49%, but the 51% stake will be with respect to the Indians. So you particularly have this particular FDI, and in this particular FDI 50% stakeholder will be Indians and only 49% stakeholder will be a foreign company. And at the same time, what also needs to be understood is, in case this inventory, right, the inventory will have to be manufactured, all the products that are made has to be made in India. So you cannot get the particular product from outside the country and sell it in India. All these products that are being sold to a particular customer have to be made in India, is what this particular FDI policy says, and that is what we need to understand. And the last important point that we need to understand, that is the fifth important point, is the Central Consumer Protection Authority. So what exactly does it say? So let's say for example, there have been number of examples where in case a customer orders an iPhone or a Samsung phone, he's got soaps and bricks and something and so on with respect to the delivery. So in order to understand and make sure that we address the issues of grievances, what we will have is the Central Consumer Protection Authority. So in case there is any grievance that a particular customer actually faces, in that particular case what we will see is a particular idea of a grievance addressal, and this grievance addressal will be provided by the Central Consumer Protection Authority. So what exactly is the concerns? So we did discuss how exactly the discounts happen. I mean, we know that the retail market are actually giving a lot of concerns. I mean, the e-commerce retail marketers. So what we need to understand is that one of the concerns that have been established by the retailers is, because these are the people who have big pockets, and we saw how Walmart actually took over Flipkart, they have huge monetary benefits with them. So because they have a large pocket, what these people are saying is that it is not actually serving a level playing field, and because it is not serving a level playing field, it is actually a problem to all those people who have the mom and pop shops. So what exactly is the problem? So all those people who are having shops in the outlets and so on, these people are facing the brunt of the e-tailers, and that is why the advantages would be in terms of the retailers, where now they will see that the discounts will not be provided. At the same time, there would be problems to the consumers. What currently consumers see is that there is a lot of competition between Amazon, there is competition with Flipkart, Jabong, and then all these people have a lot of competition, and because there is a lot of competition, consumers would be getting the discounts, so they'll be able to buy more products online. But currently, with this particular discount rate to be removed in 2 years, consumers will face the brunt and they'll have to pay more for the same product, is one of the issue areas. So what exactly is the problem right now? So the problem right now is there are number of companies who are actually wanting to get into this particular e-commerce, and because these people are wanting to enter e-commerce, what this will do is that when there are number of companies which are wanting to enter e-commerce, what will happen is it is an improvement to the economy, that is, it will generate jobs, and because they are actually generating jobs, this will be an importance to number of people. For example, the logistics team, for the employment and for the establishment of the stability in the economy. But let's say, for example, if this particular discount is actually removed, what would happen is these people who are wanting to enter into the e-commerce will have a problem and they'll not enter into this particular fold, and because they are not actually entering into this particular fold, what will happen is the jobs as a whole will be reduced. So what exactly are the basic issues? One is with respect to the customer discounts, the other one is with respect to restrictions on the players with respect to the inventory model, and third thing is there would have been number of jobs that would have been generated by the e-commerce, and because there is discounts that has been pushed off within 2 years, what will happen is this will have a drop in the number of jobs that have been created. As a result, what we need to understand is the government needs to think about this particular e-commerce issue. So the next is with respect to awareness. So kindly look into all these important articles, that is Bandipur, Supreme Court frowns on plea to ban Misha, beware the SMS on IT refunds, revamp district courts direct Supreme Court, private sector investment may see rise, Kerala defeating NIPA as payoff of social spending. So kindly go through these articles. This can act as a fodder for your mains. So kindly look into the BYJU'S CNA, look into the practice questions, both pre as well as mains. Write all your answers on the comment section. We will evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.